See.
You have to unmute, or you okay?
I think I'm muted.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. Hi everybody. Little bumpy. I've had computer problems for a bit, and I'm using a computer I haven't used to do this ever. So, welcome. If this is your first meeting, super welcome, and if it isn't, super welcome also. Please introduce yourselves in the chat, and you can add your neighborhood council or your organization. And if you want to add your pronouns, and please add your name, and also add why you are here today. We are the Neighborhood Council Sustainability Alliance, and our mission is to advance sustainability and resilience across LA through advocacy, sharing of best practices, and community action. We have, I think, 4 really active committees and an on and off again working group that has put together some really great guidelines for developers, which we encourage planning and land use committees to use. And anybody is welcome to use those anybody is welcome to join any of our committees. So please go ahead and join us. I think honestly they're mostly fun and often very productive. Housekeeping. I kind of move this little bar, which is never is a problem on my other computer. We are recording this meeting. Please, introduce yourself in the chat, and if you can add your neighborhood council or organization next to your name in your screening, that's helpful. We try to be really interactive. We'll probably be a pretty small group. Yeah, we're about 40 people now. That'll probably be a pretty consistent. So we'll try to be very conversational. You can use the raise hand feature, and we should have a lot of fun and be able to hear from everybody. We have some community agreements that we'll get to in a second. And we always ask to hear from you folks in terms of what you liked and what you didn't like, because if you don't like the meeting, that defeats the purpose, right? So we are always aiming to please. And this is not advancing. Let's see if I can advance it that way. Wow. So interesting. Okay, well, I'm going to stop sharing my screen because I cannot advance it. Okay, so I want to we have community agreements, which I cannot show you, but the gist is be respectful, demonstrate respect, be succinct, which is not a strength of mine, and frankly it's not a strength of most people in this group, which is why it's one of our guidelines. And I might remind you folks to be succinct, have fun, and we talk about stepping up and stepping back. The gist is lots of us are chatty, and some of us are really, really quiet. So if you're one of those chatty people, maybe try to hold back and create space for somebody else. And if you're one of those people who we never hear from, maybe kind of try to challenge yourself and step up a little, so that we have a balance, and so that we make sure to hear from everybody. And regarding the chat, we actually love the chat. We want you to use the chat, but we want to make sure that you're on topic, okay? So that it's a part of the conversation, not like a whole different conversation, if that makes sense. And I might be forgetting something since I could not see the guidelines, but that's the gist. Charles, could you mute everybody? Because we're getting a lot of feedback that we don't normally get. So that would be great if you can. And if you can't do it, I'll do it in a minute when I'm not multitasking myself.
But now you're muted too.
Yeah, I asked her to unmute, but
yeah, unmute Lisa.
She did unmute, but it did something to her audio.
Thanks, Ross.
No, sorry. You know what it is? Because I'm. You can hear me now.
yeah.
Sorry, this is the problem. Because I have to remember to unmute on my phone. I'm working with a two systems, so sorry about that. I often forget to introduce the board and often forget to introduce myself, but I'm remembering. I'm Lisa. I am the executive director of the NCSA, and Chris, could you go ahead? He is the chair of the board. Could you go ahead? Oh, and I should say I used to be on the I used to chair the Green Committee for the Silver Lake Neighborhood Council, and I live in Silver Lake. Go ahead, Chris.
What Lisa said, and also Tarzan Neighborhood Council, and looking forward to a robust discussion tonight. Good to see everybody.
Thank you. And Muriel.
Hi everyone. I'm also a steering board member with the NCSA with Lisa, Charles, Chris, and Alex. I am the chair of the Transportation Committee, formerly of the Echo Park Neighborhood Council. I think I wrote something in the chat. I am looking forward to hear about climate hazards and vulnerabilities tonight.
Thank you. And Charles.
Hey everybody, Charles Miller here. I'm on the board. I'm also the chair of the Green Committee for the Palms Neighborhood Council.
Thank you. And I don't think Alex is with us. Is that correct?
No. Hi, Lisa. I'm here.
Oh, there you are. Wonderful. Hi, Alex.
Hi.
Go for it.
I'm Alex Tangelos. I'm also on the board of the NCSA, and I live within the Wilshire Center Koreatown Neighborhood Council.
And I like your braids. I don't think I've seen those before.
Thank you. It's to hide how dirty my hair is.
Yes. I also have long hair, so I also know all the tricks. And she is our newest board member. Okay, so we are running a little late with all of our technical problems, but I am now going to hand it over. First, I want to thank Brandy Damore. I don't think she's here tonight, but she, a month or two ago, connected me. She used to be with the Hollywood United Neighborhood Council. Many of you probably know her. She's involved in lots of alliances, and she connected me to Jillian De Vela, who is going to be speaking tonight with Gabriela Juarez, and I'm going to just hand it over to them. Jillian is with Emergency Management, and Gabriela is with City Planning, and they are working on two separate and very related. They're in two separate departments. They're working on, this is what we love the city to be doing, right? They are not working in silos. They're in two departments, and they're working together on related projects that are both connected to the climate and that are both going to be really connected to the work of the NCSA. So I'm going to stop talking and hand it over to them. And then they're going to talk, and then we're going to open it up to, we're going to try not to interrupt them and just let them talk. And then we're going to open it up and we can comment and question. And then after that, this is another slide I forgot. Then we're going to hand it over to Charles, board member Charles of the Trees Committee, and he's going to present on the Brea Tar Pits. They're working on a proposed expansion, and the Trees Committee has some concerns and some suggestions. So we're going to talk about that in anticipation of a vote. And then after that, we're going to hear report backs from other committees, and then we'll close up, have an opportunity for announcements from everybody, and then we will do evaluations. Oh, and I'll put a link to the, or maybe Charles, we will put links to the evaluations in the chat for you guys, and then we will close up and we'll try to wrap up around 8:30. Okay, you guys have the floor and you should be able to share your slides. Thank you.
Sounds good. Hi, everyone. Let me see if I can share my screen. I think this is nice. So can anyone see my screen right now?
Yes.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Good evening, everybody. Happy Sunday. Thank you very much for having me here and Gabriela here to present to you what are the things that we are doing for the city. Once again, my name is Jillian De Vela. I am one of the emergency management coordinator, and I'm currently working for the City of Los Angeles Emergency Management Department. And tonight we're going to be presenting to you the things that I'm doing for the Emergency Management Department. And after that, I'm going to pass it to my city colleague, Gabriela, for some city planning of what the other projects is. So I will be talking about the local hazard mitigation plan. And I'm going to go, as I go through this presentation, I'm going to be explaining to you what the plan is that and how is that different from other plans that we have in the city. So with that being said, so what is hazard mitigation? As you can see on this slide, hazard mitigation is an effort to reduce loss of life and property by lessening the impact of disasters. It also describes the action that everyone is taking to eliminate long-term risk caused by these hazards. As you know, LA City is so big, and we are currently in a very unique geographic location. We're like by the valley, and we're also by the in the central, and we also have the west side of it, where the coastline side of it. So with all those things, and what the city of LA is so big to the point that we have a lot of hazard that the city is facing, not only the natural hazard as well as human made hazards. So basically this plan, so mitigation is basically something that, you know, kind of like lessen the impact of these disasters, but how does it fall in the overall aspect of emergency planning? So I'm just gonna give you like a bit of snapshot. If you're not very familiar of how emergency management works, this is like kind of like the very essence of emergency management. We have like 4 to 5 phases, and these are the phases. So as you can see, the blue ones here, these are like the works that will happen before the disaster happen, and the peach color ones are basically the after the disaster happened. So mitigation actually happens before the disaster. As you can see, it is really something like a city effort and kind of like your effort to reduce the different side on how to like prevent such hazard, to lessen the impact of the hazards. So mitigation is on this slide, and we also have the preparedness. Preparedness is something that you are doing at your home, having that go kit, signing up for notification alerts. I think everyone had received that last, I believe, Thursday. We also have or Wednesday, and preparedness is also, let's say, you know, like basically like what are we doing for emergency plans and all of that stuff. The response part is something that we are doing when a disaster happens. So like using all the plans that we have already and implement those. And of course, we have the recovery on basically helping the community on how to like, you know, recover and improve our resiliency. So mitigation falls in the pre-disaster. It shouldn't be confused with the preparedness part, because this one is something that is really like mostly, it can be like a investment to the community itself. So what are the examples of hazard mitigation? As you can see in this slide, earthquake, right? So after the Northridge earthquake, the city of LA actually like kind of improve or like update our codes to help us prepare for the earthquake, or help us lessen the impact of the earthquake. And that means by adopting and enforcing new building codes to reduce the earthquake damage. And for instance, wildfire. I know that the city has been affected by, we're not new to this, we've been affected by the wildfire. So right now, the Recreation and Parks and the fire department, they do encourage homeowners who are living in the fire hazard zone areas to like you need to like vegetation management, create a defensible space, like sign up for emergency alert. So those are like part of the mitigation to prevent the impacts of like the wildfire. And of course, the landslides. This one is something. For the examples are installing structure, retaining walls, and slope stabilization. So I know during the atmospheric river that happened early this year, we saw a lot of debris flow in the area, fallen trees, and all of that. So it's basically, so how do we mitigate that in the future to prevent that? And that is like by like creating like slope stabilization and stuff like that. So those are the examples of hazard mitigation. As you can see, it's almost like a preparation, but it's really about an effort and action to prevent also lessen the impact of such hazards. So now, what is a local hazard mitigation plan? So the local hazard mitigation plan is actually a plan that will be updated every 5 years. And this is something that actually has to go through a lot of review. So it goes through, like, of course, public comment, and it also goes to the state for review and for FEMA to review. And then if they approved it by looking at the guideline that they have, then it will go back to the city and adopt it. And this plan is basically holding the city accountable of the things that we put in here. This one cannot be confused with the response plan that we have. Is really about how to prevent hazards, right? The 2018 local hazard mitigation plan that we had, it has about 400 something pages, because it really goes to the science of disasters, and also like list the action that city, family can do and others to basically prevent such hazards. So one of the elements of the local hazard mitigation plan, and this is like also with the FEMA new guideline, is a public involvement, risk assessment, and create the mitigation strategy. And in order for us to be qualified for some grants that the federal government provide, we need to have an approved plan for this one. So it's really something that every city, not just LA City, has to go to in order to get those hazard mitigation grants. And you should not confuse this to a grant like the assistance that we normally receive if we're qualified for, like, let's say when something big happens in the city, like a disaster. So this grant is different from the recovery grants. So with that being said, right now, if I can just like be honest with you, as our current local hazard mitigation plan has actually expired. It expired in January of 2023 this year. And a lot of you might ask, like, why did we let this expire? As someone who works in the emergency management department, we have been, this might be like something, this is like based on my experience. The reason why it expired is because we didn't really like focus on this one in the past 2 years, because we've been like responding to COVID and other disasters that's been happening in the city and another emergency. Like, as you can see in the city in the past 3 to 4 or 5 years, we've been just bombarded with the city, loss of staff. A lot of folks in our department retired, and we were just basically in a response mode for the past like 3 years. But now, ever since that we finally have almost like a complete staff in EMD, we are driving, and there's like a new generation of emergency managers in the city. This is something that we really want to focus on and really want to like spread the word of the local hazard mitigation plan, because we want to take advantage of this in order for us to apply for grants that will help the city prevent the impacts of the disasters. So the one that I mentioned earlier, public involvement is a big thing. This is why I'm here today, to like spread the word. One of the things that we're doing is the community survey, community awareness survey. So right now, I'm gonna put it here in the chat later so you can access our website for this. And the community awareness survey is basically like questions of like to asking your perspective, right? For how the city, what are the things that are important to you, and what kind of hazard do you think the city is facing? So it's mostly like about your perspective. And as of right now, we have about 4,000 responses, which is pretty great. Even though our goal was 3,000, but now I think we have a new goal, which is like almost 5,000. And the deadline for this is December 1st. The second one is a public meeting. It's still like TBA. We might have to schedule this sometime in November. And when it comes to the public comment period, the public comment period is like when we present you the whole plan, and you will look at the mitigation action that the city is doing. So that will be sometime in January or February 2024. So as you can see here, this is I talk about the community survey. It's both available in English and Spanish. It's currently available online, but if you need paper copies, feel free to email me and I will be able to send that to you as well. And why is your feedback important? Is because no plan should be implemented in the city without having your input. The more active you are in to participate in here, the better. That way we know that our plan actually applies to everybody in the city. And this is something that, we're very passionate about. We really want to spread the word that this plan exists, because not a lot of people know about it. So that's why we're trying to change it this year, and really hoping to have your voice inputted in this plan. So that's my presentation for the local hazard mitigation plan. And I'm going to pass it to Gabriela, who will be talking about the climate vulnerability assessment and how this is related to LHMP. Go ahead, Gabriela.
Thank you, Jillian, and thank you again for having us here tonight. Another component that Jillian shared about getting feedback and the survey is a new component that is being uplifted and required from FEMA, which is social vulnerability in our local hazard mitigation work. And Jillian spoke about how the local hazard mitigation plan really focuses on science and technical studies, and the link with our social vulnerability, our communities of color and low income communities hasn't been the forefront of that discussion. And so this is the next step in our local hazard mitigation plans. And that also kind of helps to uplift the work that we're trying to achieve at the citywide level across all the different efforts that you probably are all very aware of, but as Lisa mentioned at the start of the meeting, appear to be in a very siloed approach. And so there isn't one centralized approach to this, and the climate vulnerability assessment is goaled to try to help account and catalog all of these different efforts so that we can start to understand the landscape of the work that's being done throughout the city and by which departments have been working on it, and also give us the sense of where those gaps may live. I'm going to drop here into the chat. We have a website that has the information so far on the climate vulnerability assessment that we've literally just started a few months ago. And our goal is to get all of the same data sets and be able to, again, verify the work that we are doing with the local hazard mitigation plan update. Think about where these gaps are. Think about the other efforts that are being done in the city to try to identify our best practices in terms of recommendations to help close those gaps, address those issues, and uplift the climate, the social vulnerability disconnects that we see in the work that exists so far, and also to help create hopefully recommendations for our citywide policies, particularly with our general plans, environmental justice, expansion, work policy, that will have a different team coming. Lisa probably knows what date they're coming forward to present to you specifically about that work program. But this also ties into that work in that we're going to be using the survey results from Jillian's team to help us with this social vulnerability assessment and help us identify where in the city we are hearing from stakeholders these gaps exist from their perspective, from their daily experiences, exposures, and lack of access or information of resources. And so we want to use this opportunity in the climate vulnerability assessment work to target those communities and have very targeted conversations to help us understand those more specific geographic concerns so that we're able to make sure that the recommendations go forward in an equitable manner. So that's a lot of information, and I hope that it's clear how we're looking at this work from a citywide perspective. And just as a timeline, we're going to be we're in our background studies right now, and we estimate this work to be about a year. And we're here to listen, as Jill said. So thank you again for your time, and happy to answer questions.
And of course, this group tends to have more comments than questions, and comments are also welcome. So please just raise your hand if you have a comment or question. And I'll start by asking one or two. Gabriela, can you give us some of the context for the motion that this was a part of? from City Council, a little bit of that background, please?
Sure, there was a climate adaptation motion that was presented a little over a year ago, and we have been responding. There's been a couple of report backs, and in the report backs, it's been a process because several efforts have been going forward. In the city, for example, we have our Climate Emergency Mobilization Office that has been doing a lot of heat and decarbonization, building decarbonization work. So there's these efforts that have been compiling and kind of achieving some of the questions and concerns that were brought forward in climate adaptation. But really what we're understanding in this conversation is that the lack of having a centralized location that shares out all of these efforts is why it doesn't seem like we're necessarily addressing everything. It's very difficult to find who is working on what the progress is in terms of year-to-year advancements, and being able to connect the dots between those, technical and state requirements and federal requirements, and also just being able to monitor progress. And again, also the lack of climate equity in connecting these dots. I think that there's been consideration made to these programs, these policies, and these approaches throughout the city, but the climate equity component hasn't been uplifted in a clear manner. And so that's also an aspect that we're finding to be lacking in this space. And so our report back outlines the concerns about where and how a climate adaptation would live throughout the city, and what kind of responses the city is making in terms of still meeting the requirements of SB 1000 and being able to make sure that we are compliant. It's just that we have a different structure than most cities. We have a charter. We also have proprietary departments that manage and oversee a lot of this work. And so it makes it difficult for us to place it under one house per se. We have to be more creative with our structure to be able to still achieve that goal and be accountable and meet those requirements. That's a really long answer to your question, Lisa, but I hope that that's helpful.
That's super helpful. No, that's really what I was looking for. Thank you. Okay, Joanne, go for it.
Okay, I'm unmuted.
And please, before you start, please introduce yourself. Thank you.
Okay. I am chair of the NCSA Trees Committee, Joanne D'Antonio. And I currently live in Valley Glen, and I'm on that neighborhood council, but I lived 25 years in the Hollywood United area under the Hollywood sign. And we experienced a lot of issues with fires, and small fires is more than big fires, but there were a couple of big ones while I was up there. I was concerned, Jillian, that you skipped over home hardening. And one of the things that we did when we bought a house up there was put a fireproof roof. And I think that we need to have more encouragement of that, because too many people think that brush clearance is the answer. And now that I brought up brush clearance, I just want to suggest that you get your information on brush clearance and tree preservation from CAL FIRE rather than from the fire department. The community, I serve on the Community Forest Advisory Committee. We've been struggling with the fire department because they often recommend the removal of native trees, which actually can help mitigate fire. We've talked to people where their oak tree has kept their home from burning. So, and we also don't want the native plants, which are suited to the area and not fire prone, to remain. So I actually served on the working group that CAL FIRE sponsored for the Urban Forest Management Plan, and they have very different views, and it's really important to use that resource. Thank you.
I want to chime in and say two things. One is to follow up on what Joanne said, and one is a process thing. And Mindy was actually at our, Joanne, were you there? I should know. We at our advocacy committee, you must have been there, Joanne, at our advocacy committee last, I guess a week or so ago, we actually talked about this issue, and we've reached out to Michelle Barton, who used to be with LA SAN and who's now with the mayor's office. She's like the, what is it, Green Infrastructure Program Manager or something, about the issue that Joanne just mentioned. A lot of people are talking about the fact that LAFD is apparently not in alignment with state standards and best practices in terms of wildfire mitigation. So we're hoping to help address that issue, because there have been conversations for years without any progress. So anyway, yes, that's actually, we're going to talk about that at the end of the meeting, because that's in our part of our update from the advocacy committee. But the other thing is, I think tonight, I mean, we can talk about it, but I think tonight you're not asking for this kind of feedback, right? Because I think you're going to do that later and maybe come back to us, and or
Yeah.
you want that in the survey, or how do we, because we're a very opinionated bunch and we'll have lots of things to share with you, but I don't know when you want that from us.
I think for the public comment period, will be good, and that's going to be sometime in January and February.
Okay.
So that might be something that I will recommend is looking at the plans and going to like the mitigation action that the city is listed. So I just want to explain how the mitigation action actually works. So the way here, so right now EMD is coordinating this project. The local has, but it's actually a citywide effort. So we're just like making sure to put everyone together on the table in the steering committee and ask them like, hey, this is something we need from you guys. So what are the mitigation actions that you're gonna put from 2018, and what are the things that you're gonna continue or gonna include? So right now there's a big, because of the FEMA new guideline and because of the grants that's available in that the FEMA is really pushing right now, we are encouraging all city departments to really focus on nature, to put something about nature-based solutions. So as a matter of fact, we have the Nature Conservancy as part of our steering committee, and they're such a big, great partner to us and really helping us to provide this discussion. So thank you so much, Joanne, for that comment. And that is something that we'll definitely like keep in mind. So when I talk to the, go ahead,
yeah,
Gabriella.
Sorry, Jillian. And if I could also encourage you, in the in the local hazard mitigation plan survey, please share this information in that survey, because my team will be taking these comments and filtering them for our lens, but we are also going to be sharing this feedback to the other teams, including the CMO team that's working on the heat action plan, and also our environmental justice team working on policy work, because I think you're all bringing forward very important aspects of this work that haven't been uplifted sufficiently in this space. I think you have been wonderful advocates of it for the other like tree canopy concerns, but we need to also centralize that into these efforts so that we're being able to draw these connections between all these work programs so that they do align in a more cohesive manner. Thank you.
Mindy, go ahead.
So yeah, so I mean, basically I had the same issue as Joanne does, but I actually had a question as opposed to just making a statement about it, which was, how are these responses going to be assessed, and who's going to be assessing the responses? And is there an actual section in there specifically addressing wildfires? Or will our comments just kind of be in a general section? And will you also be getting the responses from like LA Fire Department, or will you be going to departments as well? And if there's a conflict, for example, between what the public is saying or a state or a county department, how will you again assess, you know, the difference of opinions?
Yeah, so with that, there's definitely a section about the comments that we receive for the local hazard mitigation plan, especially in the survey. So let's say, I think the way they do it is that they basically like see like who has like the most responses on the same like topic, and that is something that they rank and include in the plan. And we actually also work very closely with the fire department and other also with the county and all the fire like agencies. And we normally really look at once we receive the responses, we actually share it to them so that way they can also like put together the mitigation action to put together a mitigation action based on the comments that we have received as well. So that's how we normally works right now. The city, so we are the one coordinating it, but again, once again, it's like a city plan. It's like all the department actually is working together in this. We also have a contractor that look at the survey responses, and they're the one that guide us. One of the things that we actually put too, because it is really important for us, there's a new FEMA guideline that FEMA released last year, and there's like a strict like guideline that we have to follow. So some of the language, it has to meet their guideline. That way, when they see it, they will approve it, and also and then after that, it will go back to the city to adopt it. So that's like how it works. But the comments really, again, what Gabriela is saying, we're not only using this for the local hazard mitigation plan, but also using this survey to look at other plans that the city has, you know, and like Gabriela was looking earlier, it will be also part of the climate vulnerability assessment and all the other plans that are related to this. So
yeah, we're really looking. We know you get asked frequently. Everyone get asked to fill out a survey, and we want to make sure that we take your time and make it as useful as possible for us. And so, when we get the survey results from Jillian's team, it will be disseminated and analyzed for our lens for our different work purposes. And also it will give us the opportunity to then begin digging deeper into those themes and questions and issues that are brought forward in a more efficient manner, so that we're able to really capitalize on this opportunity. We generally don't have these work programs aligned the way that they are in this moment. And so we really want to take advantage of that as much as possible.
Okay, thank you. And I guess very quickly, I guess the concern that I think Joanne and I and a lot of us would have is to make sure that our voices are heard and that it doesn't go back once again to just the so-called party line of just listening to what LAFD has recommended in the past, and that you actually hear what we have to say.
I think those are really important accountability concerns you're bringing forward. And I think that this is where the opportunity for us to be able to share these comments and these concerns between the different departments is where we're trying to really align and delineate the themes as they need to be placed, because there are some issues that are being brought forward just in the chat as I'm reading here that are incredibly important, but they may not be placed in the local hazard mitigation per se. They may fit in a better location. Not to say that that isn't an important overall concern to bring forward, but maybe the action plan or the next steps are really brought forward in a different manner by a different work program. And so it's about being able to see that concern carried forward in all of the different buckets that can address those concerns as adequately as possible, and then also provide next steps for us.
But I'm sure, you know, if push comes to shove, Gabriella and Jillian are going to go to LAFD and say, gosh darn it. Sorry, just teasing. All right. Melanie?
Thanks. Couple things. Let's see. So the NHMP is separate to the climate and vulnerability assessment, which is good news. I continue to have concerns over the NHMP needing to follow FEMA and utilize FEMA data. The last NHMP and other hazard planning documents in Los Angeles City and County have ignored legitimate flood risk and what we now have as modeled flood risk, because we're required to use FEMA data, and FEMA data is over 40 years old and didn't look at future conditions. And we are well past that. So FEMA doesn't reflect reality here, and having to utilize FEMA for NHMP makes it impossible for us to take an honest look at one of the most impactful risks we face, financially and property-wise, and on a population level. Flood risk will be the most devastating to Los Angeles. And we're just not conditioned to look at it. And city and county departments don't want us to. So in the last plan, there was pushback from departments to be honest about flood risk. And there's the constraint that FEMA puts on us of using their own mapping. So I'm hoping that we don't run into problems when the NHMP and the climate vulnerability assessment, and I'm being optimistic here, take vastly different approaches to our flood risk. I'm hoping that you will be able to incorporate best available science when looking at flood risk, just as we do with fire. If we can do that, then we can plan more appropriately, both in focusing on communities that face significant flood risk today, and that's more than 1 million people, not to mention critical infrastructure, and focusing more in helping them prepare. Many can't and will not be able to afford insurance, and so the importance of helping them prepare and having honest discussions with them cannot be overstated. Having a hazard response plan that acknowledges those risks is also important. And I'm really happy to hear you say that you're going to incorporate nature-based solutions. And I hope you will embrace the data point that's come out of a lot of the water planning efforts here regionally that says we need to reduce impervious surfaces in the city 30% by 2037. Because that can help us to start putting together programs and emphasizing investments that do that, both in our transportation planning and also in making the case to expand park spaces in Los Angeles, not just for, oh, isn't it nice, we have a park, aren't we lucky, but in terms of park and open space being flood risk mitigation infrastructure, right? So I'm hoping that we can take a clear-eyed look using the best available science on flood risk, using the data point already derived on our need to reduce impervious surface cover, both for heat mitigation and for flood risk mitigation and for getting stormwater to groundwater for supply, and incorporate that into a much more realistic and robust vulnerability assessment and policy recommendations on moving forward in ways that impact our transportation agencies, street services, bigger investments in rec and parks, and also having honest conversations with communities at risk and bringing these data points to the attention of those who are expediting the development of housing since much of it is happening in flood risk areas. And as we expand our housing and densify, we also have to unbuild and create serviceable open spaces to reduce temperatures, manage floodwaters, get stormwater to groundwater, and protect and support biodiversity and habitat. So I'm hoping, since you mentioned nature-based solutions, that those things will play into this. And I'm begging you not to let departments push back on downplaying flood risk any further, and to understand that the academic and scientific research on flood risk in Los Angeles puts the projected losses from flood at greater than the projected losses from the big earthquake. I know we don't see flooding a lot, but you have to understand that it is coming. And we are way behind in preparing for it. And this is an effort to prepare. So I really hope that this is centered in our planning and that we can begin the conversations with communities who are completely unaware that they're at risk so that we can do right by them. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that feedback. I actually, this is not the first time I saw the link about, I think that it's a study from the UC Irvine, and this is something that I've actually like talked to some folks in not only in emergency management department, but other departments too. So I know that I believe, so right now the EMD, for the local hazard mitigation plan, we are kind of like required to use the floodplain management plan that was updated in 2020 that Public Works, Bureau of Engineering put together. So that was something that we're gonna put, but then, and one of the things that we've talked to Public Works is that I actually forwarded this to them, the UCI like study, and tell them like, hey, this might be like a best time to look into this and really maybe possibly to apply this for the next update on when they update this flood management plan. And that is something that I believe the Public Works of Bureau of Engineering is currently is under their purview right now. But I've seen this one and I've read it, and I will talk to my folks here in to our steering committee and our contractor and see if this might be something that we can like at least put as a resource when we do that risk assessment for LHMP.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And just to bring to your attention, the UC Irvine team, and Marcia, the source is UC Irvine. The UC Irvine team was recently granted funding from NOAA to expand upon this flood modeling exercise and refine it more. And they've just begun this month in taking the phase 2 on that flood study. I hope that you can be in communication with them. I will not just be disappointed, but I will organize if I do not see accurate representation of flood risk in this climate vulnerability assessment. And I'll just caution not to knock any city employees specifically or anything, but, or even, well, okay, the agency. BOE is always going to push back. They're going to push back against nature-based solutions. They're going to push back on unpaving. They're going to push back on everything we need to do because it's not what they do. And I don't want BOE again overriding science in this plan. So I hope that the weight of input you take is not heavily favored towards city family, because that would be disaster. It has been in past assessments. I've seen it over and over again. And so I know that BOE is going to look at this, but I want you to listen to science over engineering, because they are terrified of the way forward. They do not like nature-based solutions. They do not believe in a lot of this stuff. And I'm sorry, but their day has passed. So please listen to a broader, more scientifically literate group of stakeholders, as well as those who are most impacted and concerned. Thanks.
And I just want to also like say that we actually have a lot of academic partners participating in our local hazard mitigation plan, because I know flooding is one thing, but we also have extreme heat. So we're currently working with UCLA as well as USC. And for the USC one, Now we're looking at using their data for the coastline risk and for the UCLA's extreme heat. So we definitely actually had to vet all the information, the hazard assessment risk that we're using here, and also we're going to use the hazards one. But thank you so much for that feedback. And I just want to let you know that I've been really pushing all the city family in my part, and Gabriella can know this, a bunch of emails and calling that I've said is we really need to push on a nature-based solution. And that is something that's why we have the Nature Conservancy present to us before. And that is something that I'm really pushing to the city department. So I just want to say that is something that we've been doing.
Yeah,
And
Great.
Jillian, if you ever feel like,
Thank you.
if I
Let me
could
just
also
say-
Thank you for that. And I just want to say that if you're partnering with academics, please do reach out to UC Irvine on this flood stuff.
I'll be quick.
Let me wait, sorry. Let
Can
me
I
just say
just-
something fast and then let me hand it to Gabriella. Jillian, if you ever feel like you need support, we will support you. I mean, that might not be very helpful, but it might be. So I just want you to know that. Gabriella, go ahead.
I was just going to share that similar to our health atlas and all of our other citywide planning documents, the local hazard mitigation plan does share the data set sources and the mapping. So that will be very transparent, but also the majority of the new grants that are coming out from FEMA are for nature-based capital improvements. So I think that your point, Melanie, is heard beyond this group.
I will keep my fingers crossed, and I'm glad to have you in there advocating. We've got your back.
Thank you. This is fascinating. Go ahead, Joanne.
Yeah, I just want to say that the survey, which I just read through, is all about my home. And I think that it's overlooking the fact that many of us have been truly dedicating a lot of time educating ourselves about a more holistic look at what's going on here. And I'm sort of offended to answer questions only about my home. I mean, I've lived in the hills, I've lived at the beach. You know, if I talk about my valley home, that's very limited. So I think that we need to understand that there is a knowledge base in the population beyond UCLA and USC of people that have just educated themselves on these things. And the survey doesn't give much opportunity. If we wait till January when you talk to the public, usually things can't change much then. So this is really an opportune time for you to hear from people like us. I've spent 9 years, looking at all these problems on my own, unpaid. And I do that because I'm interested in what's happening in the environment, but I don't want to necessarily work for the city. I do something else for work. So that's just a thought that the survey has a limitation. Maybe you want to consider another survey that it goes to people like in neighborhood councils or organizations like this or other environmental groups. That's it. Thank you.
Yeah, let me ask something about that because I realize I'm not clear to follow up on what Joanne's asking or saying. Is the public comment period in January, February-ish, is that a reaction to a proposal?
Yeah, so basically it's like a review. It's like a 1 month of it was actually originally scheduled in December and we moved it back and we moved it to either January or February. So that is like basically that's like where they'll implement the whole plan. But like what I forgot to mention, we do have steering committees that's been open. We try to put it in our social media and to like announce it to the world that it is open to the public too. And we do have like when we do the steering committee meetings, if I put it the website link of our local hazard mitigation plan here, and then we have a public comment section in our steering committee meetings. But right now, our next steering committee meetings is currently TBA, so we might have it in November, and that might be something that if you want to voice out that we can put that you can like say to the steering committee members. So
Yeah, I guess
Jillian, is it possible? I know the survey was not ideal in the sense that your team is rushing to meet these deadlines and achieve all this work. Is it possible that folks can put this information in the survey? To Joanne's point, it doesn't necessarily have to be as structured or literal in the comments and feedbacks received. It could be, we can take the opportunity to get all the information you'd like to share.
yeah, I think, yeah, I mean, that is something we can, if there's like a comment that they want to focus on, they can just like let us know. We actually put the EMD communication LA City, and I actually received those. So if they have any comments and wants to apply, that is something that we can include as well.
And I think it doesn't have to be literal not to homeowners only, but to renters as well, if that's appropriate or needed.
Yeah, it's all, yes, definitely.
Yeah, I got stuck on the survey. I wanted to follow up with you on this later, but I got stuck on the survey because I don't remember, but it had something to do with I'm a renter here and I'm a landlord somewhere else. And I felt like I thought I had problems with the survey. But yeah, I guess I do feel like this is a bit of a missed opportunity because we are, as you can tell, this is a super smart, super knowledgeable group. And I feel like there's a little bit of a missed opportunity, like there's so much that we know, and you can tell we think we know a lot and we want you guys to know everything that we know. And it feels like there's a little bit of a missed opportunity here in terms of a formal ability for us to share that with you for this. So I'm not sure it sounds like it might be too late to fix that, but it does seem like it's unfortunate.
Yeah, it's because it's already been out. So definitely I'll put this as a lesson learned, to like hopefully first lessen the survey and also make it more inclusive, not just for individual and also based on the community.
But I think that we can still take the feedback, and maybe it's not the direct question literally being answered, but it allows you to provide us that information because as was pointed out, it would be better for us to hear that now than later.
Yeah, and then you can always include the feedback on there too. So I think there's like a part in the survey where you can have like a comment section, and we definitely look at those carefully.
All right, I know we're over time, and that's mainly because of my technical challenges. But so let's try to hear from Wendy, Sue, Saray, and Glenn, and then, oops, and now Rosalind and Kelvin. The second I say that, did you see what happened? Okay, so let's try to move very quickly because we do want to hear from our trees committee. Wendy, Sue, go ahead.
Well, I just want to say that I also had some issues with the survey because where I live in Mandeville Canyon, we are a city designated special flood risk area. And, there was no way to capture that information and make sure that that is in the mitigation plan. Years ago, I used to contribute to those meetings. Haven't done that in several years. So I just want to make sure that that information is out there, that we're the only area in the entire city that is a special flood risk area and also requires special water course permitting for projects here.
Okay, thank you, Wendy Sue. Saray, go ahead.
Hello, thank you, Lisa. Good evening, everyone. I just had a quick question about the committees, the steering committees, and if you guys are open to nonprofits presenting and maybe contributing somehow to particular issues of crises, if you will. Number one being students that are food insecure, and number two, I would say working with those nonprofits, like I said, that are already in conjunction with getting certain green initiatives advocated and vouched for. For instance, LAUSD is in a bit of a tumultuous argument with the school board. I'm sorry, LAUSD and charter schools are arguing about shared space. And so, you know, I'm just thinking as a teacher how a lot of these students are going to not have any place to go in the event of an emergency. So the implementation of organization is critical. And if we are also working with the county, not just on surveys, but with the initiatives they are building in their infrastructure and what we plan on doing.
Yeah, Saray, I think that is definitely one of the areas that we understand to be a big gap that hasn't been fully addressed. And so the local hazard mitigation plan is more citywide infrastructure and adaptation plan, as Jillian shared. I think what your group and the students and the issue that you're bringing forward may be who we would love to have more involved in some of the other work programs like the climate vulnerability assessment and the environmental justice work, and potentially the heat action plan as well, because you're bringing forward the more vulnerable aspects of this work. And so the local hazard mitigation plan is a little bit more on the technical side, where we're starting to bridge the social vulnerability aspect to it, but there's other efforts that are more focused and will be bringing those types of issues up more in the addressing of these concerns. And so I think that this is something we definitely would love to hear more about. It may not be in the LHMP though, but I think that if you can flag it in the survey, we can definitely share that out and be able to have that more focused discussion with your organizations and the groups that you're bringing forward. And also for your information, because of the county concern, they are actually updating their cap. They did one, but they are doing updates to it already. And so I really encourage you to reach out to the county team that's working on it to share this information with them, because they have not included any of this in their cap approach.
Okay.
I believe it's LA Forward, but thank you. I think that's the name of the nonprofit that's bringing their data to the county. LA Forward.
Great, thank you.
All right, thank you, Saray. Glenn.
Hear me?
Yep.
Okay, great. I did attend one of the steering committee meetings several months ago. I am not really clear of what their role is in terms of the actual text of the provisions of the plan, or if they're just a feedback session. And also, I did want to share with everyone that one of the folks on the steering committee is a neighbor council person, Len Schaefer, who's a member of the Board of Neighbor Commissioners and president of the Tarzana Neighbor Council. So perhaps any input from NCSA at the very least could be forwarded to him, since he's been advocating for neighbor council participation, and he'll get it. All right, thanks.
And that's indirectly how we got connected, because I think that's how Brandy got connected, was through Len, and that's how I got connected, was through Brandy, just so everybody knows.
Okay. And by the way, let me add to my question. I don't know that this has been sent out to all the neighbor councils. If it has, great. But I would, especially about the survey participation, but consider that neighbor councils need multiple reminders. So I would recommend that you do, another one in October and 2 in November, before the deadline. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Rosalind.
Wait, that was a question.
Okay, I'm sorry. I don't know that I didn't hear a question. I apologize. I don't think they did either. Oh, maybe Jillian did. Okay, go ahead.
So the reason why we have the steering committee or what have it formed, because this is something that I guess we are like a CRS community because of the I'm not quite sure the code of this, but we are required to have a steering committee since the city of LA is a CRS community. And that way, here in the steering committee, that they did look at the goals and objectives for this local plan, and they're the one that like kind of like we have like a motion to approve too. It just has to go through that because of the CRS community rating. So I think that is the reason why we have the steering committee formed this way. In other cities, like for instance, City of Culver or other jurisdiction, they don't have it because they're not a CRS community. So because we are a CRS community, that is something that we have to do. Like we have to go through like a proper basically like formation. So basically, yeah. So we put everyone together in here, and that is something that they look at the plan, and we invited a lot of some of the community-based organization, and basically just a representative of them to be part of it. So we spent like almost like 4 months just to like invite people and for them to be part of the steering committee. So whoever showed up, that is something we put in our in the committee meetings.
Okay, thank you. Rosalind.
Thanks. Yeah, I was just reading through the survey as well, and I was wondering a little bit more about the testing process and also how you plan to publicize it and engage people in it. But it does seem like well, two things. One, I just want to emphasize that the accessibility for renters as well as perhaps the unhoused also, and also really thinking that there's a little bit of a conversation missing in the survey on steps for preparedness for natural disasters that can have natural mitigation steps, which is kind of lacking from there. And it does sound like there's not an opportunity to revise at this point, which is why I'm curious about just that process for putting it together and how it will be publicized at this point. Thanks.
So is that a comment or sorry, or a question?
Yeah, that was a question
on
the testing process plus how it will be publicized. Given that I had just some concerns about things that seem to be some key points that seem to be missing from the survey.
So the survey was something that we put together way back in, I believe, April. We started putting it together in July, and this was kind of like vetted by our steering committee members. We received a lot of comments also with the Nature Conservancy and our different partners. That's why they were able, this was something that it took a while to put together, and we tried to even make it like a super small or like a question. If you look at other jurisdictions, mitigation survey, they only have like 10 questions, but we try to, but for us, we have like 26 questions because we really tried our best to like have more information as much as we could. But if it's still like lacking, and in terms of like the putting other comments, that is something that you can always like let us know, and we make sure that we included that in our during our like assessment and putting our mitigation plan together. So in terms of the if you didn't see any questions in the survey that you think that you need to address, feel free to like email me, and you can even participate in the steering committee meetings if we're once we're gonna have it sometime in November. Or you can also let Commissioner Len Schaefer know too. He's such a great partner, and he's the one who's like a greatly advocate for the neighborhood council. So.
Okay, well, thank you. This was a really, really, really rich conversation. I learned a lot. And thank you, Jillian and Gabriella. I thank you for your commitment to this and the process and the projects and for working with each other. and with so many partners, including us. I really, really appreciate it. And I look forward to both of you coming back and continuing the conversation and the refinement and the work. And I know we had a lot of critiques, but just so you know, we do that to everybody. So don't take it personally. It's just how we are. And we're just very passionate about our city and the climate. And there's a lot to do, and we have to do it very quickly.
No, I really appreciate it that you guys are actually like voicing this out, and you know, it really will also help me push the other city employees or city departments to, you know, put this together and, you know, like do their job too. So I appreciate it so much. Thank you.
We appreciate the constructive criticism always. There's always room to improve, and we appreciate your time, your dedication, and your passion to making sure that our city is so great. So thank you, and thank you for inviting us. And I'm super grateful to have Jillian as a partner in this work.
And I know that both of you and many, many folks in the city have the jobs of doing work that honestly should have been started decades ago. And you are trying to do it in a few short years, and that's hard. So thank you.
Well, thank you so much. Have a great evening.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, to be continued. All right, now I am handing it over to Charles, who is the liaison, the board liaison to the Trees Committee, which Joanne is chair of. And he is going to talk about the Brea Tar Pits master plan, I believe it's called. And Charles, take it away.
I have now taken it. Thank you. Hey, everybody. So just to give you guys some context, I'm going to share here and get this up. You should probably see a letter that's in process right now. And now you should probably see a giant sloth. So everybody see that? All cool?
Yes.
All right. So the context on this is that there's been a plan to do a major remodeling of the Page Museum on the grounds of Park La Brea, and that design will include the bulk of Hancock Park as well, which is the facility it's on. And this has been going on for a couple of years, for several years actually. And there have been different efforts from community members and the Community Forest Advisory Committee and other participants to push them in direction of there were several different options, several different choices, as you know, like we did with the zoo. There were multiple options, and there were efforts to push them into things that disturbed less of the existing site, and that's all behind us now. And that generally didn't go the way of the least disturbed kind of a site. So put that in context here of now they're kind of locked in on a very aggressive site that's going to result in a lot of changes. But we still may have some opportunities to improve upon what's there. And that's kind of what this conversation is going to be about. So if you look at this, this is this area in red is Hancock Park. And you can see Page Museum's a little square on the right side of the screen. This is all the area that is part of this master plan. So it's basically everything that's not part of the LACMA build. And that's an old picture of LACMA there that they put in their DEIR, but they're already doing the revisions to LACMA, as many people are aware. And so it's not just the museum itself that we're talking about here, but the larger footprint of this area that's in red. Now, I'm going to bounce back and forth here. This is on the north side of this, on the top of the screen here is north, where 6th Street is, and then the bottom is Wilshire. And so I'm going to give you context with this photo, and it's pretty much reversed. It's kind of scant. I couldn't find a good photo that represented a similar angle. So in the bottom of the screen going left to right across the screen, that's 6th Street. And at the top of the screen going left to right, and the major thoroughfare, that's Wilshire. So it's kind of flipped upside down, or at least turned about 120 degrees around from where it was. This is the site in 1924. So a couple of key things here. You notice that there is a ribbon that goes across the site. That is an actual creek that was originally part of the site. But this is already a very disturbed site because the area north of the site, which is in the foreground, north of 6th Street there, that was an oil field for a generation, and one of the most productive oil fields really in the country. Huge, massive oil field. So everything that's part of the Park La Brea apartments today, that was all an oil field. And if you look at the lake area, which is in the northeast corner inside the little rectangle of trees, that is the lake pit that is there today. That's actually a man-made lake because it was used as a gravel pit to pull gravel out for building projects. And then it filled in with groundwater and asphalt seepage from the natural tar effect. So that's all kind of where it was 100 years ago, including this creek, which would have extended beyond the streets, but was kind of chopped off into this area and kind of serves as a seepage area as it is right now. And a dry creek's a good portion of the year. The little reddish kind of circle that I put there is key, and I'll be referring to this later, but you can see what we believe are some young, fairly young relative to today at least, sugar bush and toyon, two sugar bush and a toyon that were there at least 100 years ago. I'm trying to go through the archives of the site to determine if those were planted by humans or indigenous to the site. Haven't been able to come up with a confirmation that's 100%, but I'm working with people who know. Regardless, we think these are the trees, those trees are there today, and so they have a full century of history at the site. The new designs, and this is from the DEIR, the new designs include 3 different areas that have a kind of an updated version of what they called Oil Creek, that ribbon that you saw running across there. And they include biofilters is what they're calling them, which essentially is a bioswale and a couple of things that are planters that are kind of functioning as a bioswale. And those are part of the new design. However, if you look in the DEIR, those biofiltration areas all are, as proposed, are all going to have a liner within them, which is presumably plastic because it's going to be impermeable. And then they're going, so one of the things that seems kind of counterintuitive about this project right now is they have these 3 biofiltration areas, which is a great idea. And all of them essentially are catching all of the water with a plastic liner and moving it to a pipe, which then gets dumped into the city drain. So they're going through the nature-based solutions process of cleaning this water naturally, and then they're taking the water, putting it in a pipe and dumping it in the city storm drain, where it'll all get repolluted again before it makes it to the watershed. And so that's one of the things about the project that seems rather counterintuitive. I have asked the designers of the project about this and for more insight on it, and they declined to give me any information. They said, we have very good reasons, but you have to provide public comment through the public comment process, and then we'll respond. So that's kind of where we are on that. This is a Google Maps version that I'm using, which is more updated and a little bit easier to see. So this is back with Wilshire at the bottom of the screen and 6th Street at the top. And this is the site today. Again, remember that red area, a red surrounded area did not include the LACMA footprint. But as you can see in this particular image, there are a lot of mature trees. And the option that they chose of the 3 plans that they chose does remove, by their own estimates, between 135 and 180 trees. And that's all mature canopy. And the current plan does call for replacing a lot of that, but that's a lot of mature canopy that's being lost for the community. And the other plans had less mature canopy that was being lost, but the one that they've pretty much landed on at this point, that's not going to change, that a lot of those trees are going to be moved. They do estimate that it's 150 to 200 trees in their own documents, but that 10% can be moved. So that's how I get the 135 to 180. The current plan does call for probably keeping all the trees on the right side, most of the trees on the right side of the screen where Curson Avenue is. And then where you see the parking lot in the northeast corner of the lot and the top right corner, the parking lot's going to be moved back and extended over. So all of those trees on the very top there, which are pretty mostly jacaranda and some fir species that are non-native, those are all going to be removed. And there are also some toy pine within the parking lot that will be removed. I'll discuss in a second. Now, this is my overlay. These red dots, These are all mature native species that are slated to be removed as part of the development, the new plan that they've landed on. And so as you can see, that's a lot of our mature canopy that's native, and that is going to be yanked out. That's really consequential to what we're going to talk about in a second here. Here is the outlay of the new project. So you can see where you see that area of 6, that's like a raised area where there's kind of a horseshoe that looks into an underground part that goes below the 5 and the 1. And then the 5 is going to be also on a raised surface like 1 is today. If you've been to the museum, you know that the main part of the museum is subterranean and that it's surrounded by a mound of earth that goes all around it. So the area that is 5 on here would have something similar, and then a bridge, a walkway across the 6, and then that ring, that kind of like arch where you see 6 is actually open to the public. Here's a better view of that, so you can see where that actually, how that manifests. And so the amount of lawn space for green space for the community is actually about the same as what's there now. So there is a lot of lawn that is going to be part of what's there. And, you know, that is an irrigated space. So that is something to be considering from the standpoint of sustainability. But you can, all this stuff on the left there, where you see what looks like kind of pterodactyls, but that's not what they are, in the raised museum on the left, that is all new space. And that's where a lot of our native trees are now. And if you look at the very lower left-hand corner of the screen, that's where a lot of the trees are that I'm going to talk about right here. So if you look at picnic area, which is kind of in the center up in the middle of there, that's where we have today's Pleistocene garden, which is a bunch of native trees and native plant species that populate this area down toward further south toward the lake pit, in that area right there. This is from the DEIR also, and it shows a graph of the trees that they intend to remove and the trees that possibly will remain. Most of the stuff that's remaining is the mature canopy, which is all non-native, over on Curson on the right side of the screen. And then the stuff that's mostly going away is a lot of the native stuff, which is kind of the cyan or light faded gray kind of color in those dots. All of the DEIR, by the way, is available on the Park La Brea website. You can access it through there. Okay, and now, there we go. Here are the species that are possible removals based on my own inventory. The DEIR does not have an inventory of tree species or even the actual number of trees. It just gives rough estimates of the number of trees and is silent on the issue of native species that are being removed. As you can see, all 6 of our native tree species are slated, have multiple examples, have multiple examples that will be removed. There may only be 1 walnut, though I think there's 2. Depends on how you define it, honestly. But they're right next to each other, so they could actually be the same tree. But that includes the coast live oak, the western sycamore, the toyon, California bay laurel, blue elderberry, and the black walnut. All of these are mature species that are really important biodiversity super plants, which is why they're on our protected species list. And we're losing all that stuff. We're also losing some of these other species that are on here that are all native, including Torrey pine, which is endangered, and a shrub species called Nevin's barberry, which is particularly endangered. But I want to draw your attention to the kind of middle of this list where you see sugar bush, and then there's also the toyon that I mentioned up above that. That's one of the protected species. Remember that red circle that I showed you on that 1924 photo from early in the presentation? That includes 2 sugar bush and 1 toyon. The sugar bush, I believe, are very possibly are the biggest examples in existence. They're certainly the biggest in the city of LA. Certainly, if they are not indigenous and they were planted, they're still native. If they were planted by humans, they're most certainly the biggest planted in the city. And at a century old, they are massive, they are very interesting, lovely, and they are historically significant to that extent. And if you remember, if I went back here at this area right here in the bottom left-hand corner that we saw where it says picnic area, that's where those 2 sugar bush are and that 1 toyon. So as you can see, they're not really part of the build environment. They're right on the very edge of where the earth moving will be done for the new build. We think that we can credibly and reasonably ask to preserve those 3 trees and another tree, which is a little bit further north of them, which is a California buckeye, all of which are historically significant, among the largest known examples in the city of LA. And in the case of the sugarbush, they're very possibly the largest known examples of this species in existence in the entire world. This is a species that only exists regionally, and they're really massive examples of that. So that's kind of where we're going to get us to this, which is the 5 asks that we have in our draft letter, DEIR public comment at this point. Number 1 is to allow the biofill areas to recharge the groundwater. If they come back and say it's a liability issue, or they're really worried about flooding and we can't put in an overflow drain or something along those issues, then what we can say is, well, why don't you at least capture that water that's been cleaned by this natural process and use it to help irrigate the massive lawn footprint that is on this site, instead of exclusively using potable water for that irrigation. Next is to redesign the project to save those 4 trees, 2 sugarbush, 1 California buckeye, and 1 toyon. Now remember, there are many, many more natives that are getting axed as part of this process, but these are really irreplaceable for the size they are and their own unique characteristics. And then number 3, because this is on county land, they can make a legal argument that they are exempt from the Los Angeles ordinance on protected species. But our 6 protected species right now, if you remove it on city land, you're required to replace them at a 4-to-1 ratio. So we're going to say, regardless, before we get into the whole legal argument, you're putting in a lot of trees anyway. You can accommodate this within what you're doing in the design. So put in a 4-to-1 replacement ratio for the natives you are taking out. And the number 4, for the Burbus navini, the Nevins barberry, which really is a critically endangered native species, we ask that you put in, you add that to the landscaping design. It's not in the landscaping design at all right now. And you put in a 4-to-1 plate replacement ratio for anything that you might take out there. And then lastly, the DEIR is really positive on natives, and it includes a lot of native species. In fact, the only species they list as probable species are native. But then when you talk to the landscaping designers and the arborists working on the project, they immediately say, well, we're talking maybe 90 to 95% native, and they want to put in some exotic trees from other places around the world because that's just operation standard for them, business as usual. And so we want to push very, very hard back on that and say, look, this is the most important Pleistocene fossil site in the entire world. There's no debating that whatsoever. Over half the fossils from the last 100,000 years come from this site in the middle of downtown or part of urban Los Angeles. And there's not a better case for taking those trees and landscaping plants from that fossil record and putting them in. There are over 100 non-native trees that are already going to be preserved. There's no need to plant more non-native species. We should use this fossil record as the guide, and we should only plant native species. So that's the ask that we're doing in the letter that we want to get everybody behind. And then if you want to do your own public comments, of course, you're completely welcome to do so, or through an organization that you're involved in. You could do so by going through this email address or this mailing address. And that's pretty much it. And so the Trees Committee thanks NCSA for allowing us to present here. And, you know, we really appreciate everybody's thoughts and feedback. I'm going to get out of that now and stop sharing.
Okay, I want to okay, I'm worried about time, but I have one concern and one clarification. One, the Trees Committee, just so you folks know, has not voted on this yet. So the we right now, as I understand, is Charles and Joanne, I think. But because of timing, I think the comment is due October 26th. So we're doing things a little bit backwards because Charles and Joanne wanted to get this in front of everybody because there is a lot of information, and this is the last opportunity to get in front of everybody before we do a vote. If we do a vote, it would be via email. Lastly, I saw something about the county in the letter or something today, and I stewed about that, and I just found out about a minute ago that it was on county land. I'm sorry but I don't know that this is something we should be commenting on at all because we don't do county stuff. So maybe this is not the time to have an argument about that, but I don't know why we would be weighing
It's
in.
wholly enclosed within the city of Los Angeles.
Yeah, can I make a comment about that? We have neighborhood councils who actually do planning and land use issues where the property is county. It's a problem because they're in the city and they should be respecting the city's guidelines and codes, even though their land is county. I mean,
I can see that this is a gray area, and so yeah, so let's put a pin in that since it's 8:06.
And Beverly Hills is cut out as not part of the city. They don't take the area of LACMA and the Page Museum and put a line around it and say it's not part of the city of LA.
Okay, so let's put a pin in that because we're not gonna solve that before we need to move on. So do we want to, Charles and Joanne, do you want to hear from folks? Should we go to Saray and AJ and folks?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Sentences that I've not completely made up my mind about this letter, and I do want to hear from people. So
okay, let's go to Saray. Or do you want to moderate, Charles?
I can, sure.
Sure.
Up to you.
Yeah, yes.
Okay.
Saray, you're up. Yeah.
Thank you, Charles. Great presentation. Couple of things. Going back to the jurisdiction issue, KYCC actually operates in that area for canopy services. I worked for them with city plants, and I've also I'm going to reframe myself and temper my comment because I used to work for the Natural History Museum, and it's going to be a whole footloose expedition trying to get them to abide by any kind of regulatory measures. But keep in mind that there is the USC location, so people are traveling from there to the Brea Tar Pits. And I'm interested in extending the olive branch with them to say, hey, like how you were saying in your comments and suggestions, what can we keep? What do you guys want to see going forward? And I just think it'd be a good opportunity for our alliance and also city plants and other organizations that focus on canopy to educate the masses about these issues, because if we don't have the manpower behind us, they're just simply not going to listen to us. And we have to get people asking them questions more about what they want to see in these museums. So I'll leave it there. Thank you.
Sure, I appreciate that, Saray. And it's important to note that these asks that we have in this letter are not that big. They can be done without major redesign of the project. They can be done without major cost, major delay. It's basically like, some of the people in the community who were completely against this have already had their say, and they didn't succeed in stopping this development. The development's happening. We would just like to fine tune it around the edges a little bit in a way that actually makes it better for sustainability and better for the community. So, Mindy.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's all very reasonable. My question is, what is the status of the actual letter? I think at the beginning you showed it for a moment briefly, because at the end you just mentioned the 5 asks or points that you have, but in terms of the actual letter, and if you wanted us to also, separate from us voting on it, if we wanted to take it separately to our neighborhood councils and not write our own letter, is your letter ready to go yet, or are you still working?
It's a very good question. I did another fine tune on the letter just before the meeting here that hasn't been shared with Joanne yet. But I think the letter is, we're not releasing the letter to everybody as part of this meeting because we're not voting on it, but we're going to probably this week, very soon at least, solicit trees committee to probably do a by email vote. That'll be up to Joanne, but I mean that is kind of the discussion that's been going on. And so the letter is pretty, I think the letter's ready as it is, but other people might disagree with that. And if we have to tweak it a little bit to get trees committee to thumbs up, then certainly that's not impossible.
And
you
to
know,
get me to sign it would take a little tweaking, just so you know.
And tell me again, or tell us again, and what is the deadline in terms of how you see it, if as far as having any impact, or when they're going to be making some decisions at the museum?
right. The deadline for public comment on this is the 26th of October.
Okay. Yeah.
That is, you know, I mean, that's basically the hard and firm I'm putting in the letter, because the tweaks that we're asking for are not major design changes. I think that we still are perfectly okay on the timeline in doing that. The original goal for this project was to get it built before 2028, before the Olympics. I've been told by numerous people involved in NHM that the money raising is way behind schedule, so that timeline's been pushed. So I don't think it's something that that in any way would impede upon the schedule to get it in by October 26th.
Okay, thanks.
Marcia.
Yeah, thanks so much, Charles. First of all, I want to say great appreciation for the research you've done on the Toyon and the Toyon and the sugar bush. I think the fact that they're more than 100 years old, and how big they are, that's all very interesting and important information. But I also think, this is a very great example that could be used for the rest of the region when you've got so many trees, so many native trees, that we should be asking for every single one of those native trees to be preserved. When we're talking about carbon or nature-based solutions, the whole point of nature-based solutions is to keep the carbon in the ground, to keep the carbon there, to keep the roots and the tree bark and the leaves all there. And you take them out and you try and bring them back 4-to-1, it's not the same. Especially, I've seen what the county does with replacement trees. They put little strawberry trees in, or something that has, it takes a long time, if ever, to replace the carbon. So I just think we should be going to the county supervisors and making this a big campaign. Besides the fact that I think this letter needs to ask for more. Thanks.
I agree with you. I feel like to some extent that battle has already been lost, but that is also why we put in the specification that the 4-to-1 needs to be on site and with the same species. So it's not a situation where they're doing exactly what you said, which the city is guilty of at times. And
I think it's never over till it's over.
Fair enough. Isabel?
Yeah, I mean, I agree with Marcia in the sense that we're not asking for a lot, and I think it's super reasonable, and I would definitely vote in favor of it if that's the direction that you thought we needed to go. I'm just so disappointed with them. We met with them multiple times. I don't know if Joanne was there, but Anne and I and Shelley met with staff there, and they were so not very forthcoming. They listened to us. We talked about the trees. We visited the site. We talked about continuing a dialogue with them, and that dialogue never occurred. And when I say we, I mean us members of CFAC. For those of you that don't know, that I'm on CFAC with Joanne, and Anne brought this to our attention. What was that, like 2 years ago? It was during COVID. So I guess I'm just speaking, it's more of a question, like, do you really think the levers of our power is so diminished that now all we can do is ask for, and not that it's a minimal ask, but preserving those beautiful trees? Or is this the beginning of a campaign?
You know what? My position is this is not a small ask from the standpoint of it is very consequential. I mean, preserving these 4 trees is really a big deal. These 4 trees are very significant, and having them as talking points, as education points, all of that is extremely valuable. And to ask for all of the existing native trees, or even all the trees that are there, would basically prevent the build in the design they have right now. And I feel like by asking for all that, we basically would give them an ability to dismiss all of what we're doing. I feel like these 5 asks, I feel like the first one on the irrigation thing, they're probably going to dismiss that anyway. But I feel like the numbers 2 through 5, I feel like we have a very, very plausible chance of letting them pretend they're getting a win and giving us a win, whatever it takes politically to get that. And that's kind of where I'm coming from this point. I don't think it's a small thing that we can get these things added to the design. So, so yes, I hear you. I understand. I appreciate the work that CFAC did on this. But at the end of the day, this is, I think, what's doable. And that's my read on the situation. And it's entirely possible that's wrong. I think Greg was next.
Okay, let me just, I'm worried about time. Can we wrap this up in 4 minutes, do you think?
Sure. Well, we'll just say everybody who doesn't have their hand up right now, then this is locked on questions. And Saray, unless it's really important, we've already heard from you once, so we'll just go with those 3, but I'll give you a chance if you have something important to add.
Joanne also has her hand up.
Okay.
Hey, Charles, it's Greg Shirk, and I'm new to the forum, so I might forgive me if I sound ignorant or a little naive. First of all, thank you very much for the work you put into this. I would agree with Marcia and others, though. I do think we should try to do whatever we can to try to save, or try to keep more of the trees, the native trees if possible. And I'm just wondering if anyone, and I recognize the politics as well, but is anyone, I think this is Horvath's district, has anyone had any direct conversation with her about this issue?
I have not. I don't know if others have. And believe me, everything you guys are saying, I'm sympathetic to completely. I just would hate to see these 4 go at the because we took an absolutist position that's going to be dismissed offhand.
All right. Well, thank you. Thanks for your work. Thanks, everybody.
Melanie.
Found the button. 2 things really quickly, Charles. If we can connect later, I want to, if you can share with me the designs as you have looked at them for those over-engineered bioswales, and how they fit into the site. I mean, my gut sense is they could be done a lot more simply and a lot more legitimately nature-based.
No question.
And it could be good to push them to do legitimately nature-based rather than overly engineered, too expensive, not very functional stuff that they keep doing. So I would love to connect with you after on that. And then I do think Greg raises a good point. It'd be nice to reach out to Aaron in Lindsay's office when we're ready with these concerns and bring them directly to him. I think he'd appreciate that, and he would be interested. So I'm happy to help with either of those. And
Appreciate
thank you for all the great work you're continuing to do on this. It's really, really appreciated.
Thank you. Diana.
You're muted.
Thanks, Charles. So I'm really queasy about the narrow asks. And I always think it's good to go in politically with more. And then that gets whittled down. So to start small, then get smaller is never really a great strategy. But the thing that I want to share with everyone is that they had a competition. And I'm glad you're shaking your head, Charles. And I'm somewhat aware with one of the submissions. There are out there more environmentally superior plans, taking away less green space. And I won't get into what at least one of them that I'm somewhat familiar with is, but it seems to me there's a couple problems with this. One, under CEQA, you can't defer mitigation. And I read some of the EIR, and there's a lot of vagueness there. And they have not identified, like the trees, some of the mitigations. That's deferred analysis under CEQA, and that's actually not legal, but it's just not right. Secondly, why are we not seeing these other design plans in the EIR? That's what the EIR is supposed to be about, which is to share all of the possibilities, or at least a good number of alternatives
The
with
appendices,
the public for
Diana,
analysis.
the appendices to the DEIR do contain the other plans that were voted down.
Great, thank you, because I was thinking, I didn't find those, and I appreciate getting that information. That's all I wanted to share. I know you want to keep it short. Thank you.
Cool. Saray, we're tight on time, so
Yeah, I
keep it
mean,
short.
I would like your email, Charles, because I mean, you know, in light of this deadline, it is a little ridiculous that these native indigenous trees are going to be chopped down. I would like to go up there with you to make the point that, you know, that should not be tolerated, and they're taken away from their own agenda, which is historic preservation. I mean, like, how obvious can we get? But I don't want to take up time. It'll anger me, but I would like to connect with you on this so we can make our points made and clear. And if we have to do some kind of mock trial, I'm all for it. If we have to literally protest this, I'm all for it. Thank you.
You make a key point, and you know, I like to point out to people that all of the species that were on that list that I showed you, they all survived the same climate changes that wiped out all of the megafauna. So these plants and trees are stronger than Columbian mammoths, than mastodons, than those giant sloths. They're stronger than all that stuff, and they have built into their DNA that resilience. What they can't do is stop a bulldozer from running them over. So Joanne, you're up.
I just want to thank everybody for their comments, because I do think that it is possible in a letter to make a bigger point about how much they plan to lose. And, you know, under CEQA, it is our job to let them know that, because these are not environmental people. And I think we can do that and also put in, you know, what could be done with the existing plan. But we could also, you know, reprimand them in, you know, obviously not in a slap, but let them know, you know, that they're really overstepping their kind of philosophy of preservation of you know, what's native here. So I think there's room for this. I wanted to hear this from people in the group, and I appreciate all of you coming and making these comments. I really do. And we'll work on the letter. The draft did go out with to the Trees Committee that was invited to this meeting. So the draft is out there, but it's already changed some, and it may change some more. You know, obviously Charles and I will have to talk about it, but please do email us if you have more input. Thank you.
All right, thank you, folks. We're going to try to get you out by 8:30. We probably won't, but we will get close. I am going to, and Charles, yes, I'm super impressed by the research you did and by your research and your presentation skills. I don't even know how you managed to do all of that. That's a really powerful story. So thank you for all of that. Alrighty, I am going to move to our committee and other updates. God, this computer, everything is so different on this computer. It's wild. I cannot see my little slideshow thing. So bear with me. There it is. Okay, so advocacy committee, there's still a lot going on with charter reform. And we have a new fun idea that we'll be talking about at our November 5th meeting. The window, I'm told, for our neighborhood council bylaws is open, and we're going to talk about a fun idea, which is maybe connecting the idea of community assemblies, which Melanie first introduced me to, connecting that to neighborhood councils. So you probably don't know what I'm talking about, but you might in the next few months, and you can come join us in November if you want to learn more. I was very tormented by this decision, but some of you know, and maybe all of you know, we did file kind of a disappointed letter with our city council about the Brown Act violation regarding Jamie York's non-appointment, to the Ethics Commission. Once again, so Melanie connected us to the Extinction Rebellion / Youth Climate Strike list of demands, which we have requested modifications to, and I don't know what the latest on that is, but we will see.
Working it out this week.
Oh, cool. Thanks. Great to hear that. Bias whales. Boy, Aurora Corona from Pico Union Neighborhood Council. Boy, she's been a rock star and done a ton of research, and found out that the city of LA really dropped the ball. First, she thought it was just in CD1, but it turns out it's across the city. I don't know what happened, but as a part of this Complete Streets program, the city was supposed to do these bias whales all over, and they didn't finish the project. Not only did they not finish the project, but speaking of bias whales being overdeveloped and not nature-based, speaking of turning, you think of bias whales as nature-based, the Bureau of Engineering managed to turn these bios whales into the most un-nature-based thing imaginable. I'm just in awe of engineers. I'm sorry, I'm being so snarky lately. Turn these things into, I don't know. Anyway, I could go on and on. Anyway, the bioswales were so overbuilt and it never got finished all over the city, and have just become these graffitied trash receptacles. So we are working or hoping to work with Michelle Barton, who's now with the mayor's office, on that as well. And as we already discussed, we're working with her on, or hoping to work with her on wildfire resilience and LAFD's guidelines, which are not in alignment with basically everybody else, as near as I can tell. So, and that's just a highlight. We have so much going on and we're behind on a lot of stuff. But so it's a very interesting, I think, committee. Lots going on, lots of frustrating stuff, frankly, but we are making baby steps. Sometimes one step back forward, 2 steps back, but we are making movement. Okay, once again, my computer does not want to advance the slides. So AJ, can you go ahead without slides, and I'll try to back out and come back in?
Yeah, Lisa, I have them in front of me, so you don't need to worry about that.
Okay, I'll just go ahead then, and I'll try to bring them back up.
Okay, hello everyone. I wasn't here in the beginning, just introducing myself. AJ, Chair of the Energy Committee. Just want to highlight about 5 items. So the first one is that we were present at the Congress of Neighborhoods and conducted a successful workshop on how to get off gas. So first want to start off by giving a shout out to Lisa, to the Building Decarbonization Coalition. Also have to throw Muriel's name in there as well for just helping to make sure that all of this was a success. This was actually my first one I was conducting. I learned a lot as well. So definitely look forward to conducting the next one. It was very informative. We had a lot of Q&A, so we'll definitely look forward to being there next year and, doing this again. The second item that I want to highlight is on the Vista Hermosa drilling site. So we're still in the middle of the draft motion. We intended to have further discussion on the draft motion, but we have made significant progress. We are getting close. We just need to take, another look at it, but we are getting close, hopefully. And Lisa, please correct me if I'm wrong, to sending it to CD1 soon.
Yeah, I'm almost done. Kathy has done a ton of work on it, and I am almost done, and I plan on, yes, we're super close.
And once again on this one, have to give a big thanks to Kathy, because she was very instrumental in, in being the first mover in this. And then the next one is on the Murphy oil drilling site. So there was a hearing scheduled on October 3rd. I haven't received a full in-depth report.
So it was canceled. It's really, really frustrating. Just so folks know, it was canceled while people were there, a full room. and it was canceled for some conflict of interest issue that was not, it was not clear what happened, but everybody was there and it was canceled.
Okay, so I did read that email correctly then, because I just wanted to make sure I had that right.
I
But
didn't see an email, but yeah, it was canceled.
then I did, and then I also saw in the correspondence possible suggestion to have Stand LA help us with this as well.
Oh yeah, sorry, the email that I sent, yes. Well, Stand LA is involved with the Murphy Oil one, and we are hoping they'll get involved with the Broadway one, yes.
Okay, and then for the Broadway oil drilling site, there was a letter that was drafted, in favor of decommissioning this. We took a vote on it as a committee. And Lisa, if I'm not mistaken, this was already sent over to contacted and planning, and it's under review now.
This one, there was a hearing on this maybe last week, and hasn't been a decision, but we heard from the zoning administrator that he's likely not going to vote in our favor. So we are very disappointed. So that's why we want to get Stand LA involved.
Okay, yeah, that's
so we're hearing on both of these, you guys, on both the Murphy Oil site and the Broadway Oil site. We're probably not going to get what we wanted for either one. So this not looking good.
Okay, well, thank you for your help on that, Lisa. And the last item that I wanted to highlight was so for those of you familiar with the Aliso Canyon disaster, so it's now in the phase right now under and it's being conducted by a panel from UCLA. So I actually attended a panel discussion with many other people from the neighborhood. And one of the highlights and takeaways was the concerns that we expressed was their association with the Department of Health Services. So one of the things that we told them is that in order to ease our concerns, to provide us the assurance that there's no direct alliance with the Department of Health Services, because essentially our perception is that our perception is that DHS is basically punting the ball to UCLA and basically using them to try to basically not find anything, so then they can make this go away. So we as a group are continuing to, make sure that doesn't happen. This is going to be a 5-year process. They're in the early stages right now, but it's something that we're going to continue to follow up on. I'm actually on the emails for the UCLA study, so any further meetings that come up, I will definitely be a part of it. And look forward to providing more updates. And just as a reminder, our meetings are at 7 p.m. every third Wednesday. And thank you for your time, everyone.
And some really, really big bad news is that CPUC has approved the expansion of gas storage at Aliso Canyon. So we're going in the opposite direction of what a lot of people wanted and thought would happen.
Yeah, and actually one of the reps was there because there's a project going on, a separate street project where and there was a mention, so it sounded like in that instance there wasn't really much room for us to push back on it, which is the frustrating thing about the CPUC.
Yeah, and this all happened really fast as far as I was aware. Well, thank you, AJ. That was great. That was super helpful. Muriel.
Hello. We had our meeting last Thursday. It's usually the first Thursday of the month. We had a very rousing Stop the Gondola presentation by Phyllis Lang. And then, oh goodness, I don't know why I didn't do the bullet points, but we tabled the CD13 Transportation Committee discussion, and we're just I'll talk more about it for the next meeting. And
probably
then
not, because we're probably going to do the Stop the Gondola.
Yeah, so I figured probably like December or something. And then same thing for the other two things, for the STC and the STAP. But yeah, that was our meeting.
Anything else?
Not that I know of off the top of my head.
Okay, thank you. Short and sweet.
Mhm.
All right, Joanne. Joanne.
Sorry, I'm muted. Yes, we've been on a short hiatus. Maybe it's a little long now, thanks to I had a pipe break and my mother's in hospice. But anyway, moving into the future, I got a survey from Karen Bass, and she wanted to know what was important to the person taking the survey. And she had all these city departments, like, and Streets LA was the closest I could find to anything that resembled where my advocacy is. And I was really disappointed. I mean, I think that we kept telling her to put trees in her agenda, and it seems to be gone. The two CFAC chairs and I will be meeting with the deputy mayor for what is it? I guess it's
Infrastructure.
Yeah, public works infrastructure. It goes back and forth. Sometimes it's listed one way, sometimes the others. But
Are
anyway,
you talking about Randall Winston?
yeah, we're gonna have a second meeting with him. And, we sent him a whole big vision that Seattle has for trees, and it really is a top-down thing that's pretty wonderful. And and he liked it, and we're trying to promote that with him. But I realize that the reason trees weren't on Karen's list is there aren't enough people making noise about them. So we're gonna brainstorm, probably on the 28th of October, try to find ways that more tree voices can get to city officials. And we really want to find more ways to get procedural status for trees and biodiversity, because otherwise it's greenwashing. It's the Green New Deal that, I mean, you probably saw the article in the LA Times yesterday, where Controller Major said, really, there's no there, and not much has happened, and there's not much that is happening. So we want to see more. I mean, I always go back to the street vendors. I mean, I went to a meeting at City Hall where 500 street vendors showed up, and that's how they got their ability to function. And, we're just going to have to bombard them the way people bombarded the mayor about homelessness. So that's kind of it. I'm still tabling the discussion on guidelines for developers. Everything is moving so fast, but I think we really have to get back to this business of, in this whole holistic view of trees, where they go on new projects. And I still haven't posted the recording of the March meeting. I apologize. My life's been really pretty turned upside down. But I'm trying to get back on things, and I think this DEIR letter is important. We will have another draft out to you this week. And if the Trees Committee doesn't have any objection, then we'll submit it to the NCSA board, and it will then be posted on the DEIR if it passes through all of that. Oh, and the reps have to sign off on it too. The reps will vote on it. So that's it.
All right, thank you. And then Charles, you want to talk about the big day?
The big day, sure. Saturday, November 4th, we're doing an event with Climate Reality Project LA at Rio de Los Angeles State Park, which is up by Highland Park on the north side of the river up in that area. And it's going to be all about native plants. It's going to include a expert panel that's going to discuss biodiversity and discuss the importance of the role that native plants serve in our ecosystem, and why you should care about that. We're going to have a tour of a habitat restoration area, and also point out a fully developed area that has a bunch of mature native trees in it and a parking lot. And they all do perfectly fine, even though we're sometimes told natives can't work in an urban environment. And we're also going to talk about incentive programs to replace lawns. We're going to talk about an NCSA initiative to actually do the labor to help replace lawn at a multifamily residential building. And we're also going to give away some plants. So very cool stuff. Please come. It should be a fun day.
All right, cool. That's all I have for announcements. Anybody else? You've got anybody who wants to make announcements can go ahead.
I just want
Oh.
to, I'm going to send it to Lionel, but I'm giving my endorsement and Lionel will tell you what he's running for.
Thank you, Joanne. Hi, everyone. My name is Lionel Mares from the Sun Valley Area Neighborhood Council. I am running for the Sierra Club San Fernando Regional Group. And the election I put up on the link on the chat box. If you or someone you know as an active Sierra Club member, please consider voting. The voting ends around November 14th, if I'm not mistaken. I'd like to thank Joanne for her support and this committee organization for your support, and I look forward to working with many of you on sustainability environmental causes, and with Charles Miller and Joanna on native species and biodiversity. Thank you, Lisa.
Thank you, Lionel. Anne, go ahead.
Yeah, hi. I thought I would mention, I think this relates, I don't know how to put a PDF in the Zoom, but I'll try it.
Me neither.
Okay. On November 5th, our council office is having an event in Pan Pacific Park. It's about composting and bringing your pumpkins and smashing them as an event for families. And so there'll be some ecological booths. I think Theodore Payne is going to be there. UFD is going to have a craft project, I think, building birdhouses with recycled elements. And I could send you that flyer to be distributed. I think it seems like a good educational event. I'm looking to see if there are any other details. It involves LA Sanitation, LA Office of Beautification, Public Works, and our council office, Katie Yaroslavsky. So I'll probably volunteer somewhere there.
And somebody, a colleague of mine at LA San actually did, anyway, could you email that to me? Because I actually do need to let somebody know about that. So if you could email that to me, that would be really helpful. Thank you. Glenn, go ahead.
Thanks. Well, it's that time of year again. The Neighborhood Council Budget Advocates are starting in their meetings with all the city departments, general managers, assistant general managers, CFOs for the budget proposals for next year. They're typically due into the mayor by the second week of November. We haven't received the mayor's budget memo yet, but it was supposed to have come out last week. So I let you know that because number one, if you're interested in participating in a particular department meeting, email budget advocates at labudgetadvocates@gmail.com. The website is budgetadvocates.org. If you just want to provide input, send it to that email. We'll get it to the appropriate committee that's meeting with the city departments. And if you have recommendations, those, unlike our meetings, which are general citywide recommendations, you can submit specific ones, although we ask that they not be property specific, for consideration to be included in our recommendation to the mayor and city council for the next upcoming budget. Thank you.
Thank you, Glenn. Saray.
Hey, thanks everyone. Just wanted to put on everyone's radar a proposal from Partnerships for Growth LA. They have I'm looking at the Instagram post right now. Freedom Farms is seeking proposals, community-based organizations with any size outdoor or green space. This organization, Partnerships for Growth LA, is a collaboration between the Jewish Center for Justice and McCarty Connect. and my good friend, Pastor Eddie L. Anderson, is helping them out. Lisa, you may remember Pastor
Oh, yeah,
Eddie
yeah, yeah.
from my Community Impact
Yep.
Resource Day with City Plants. And he's also running for CD10 seat. So, and I'm helping him out. So I'll just leave that there. And I'll be sure to spread this link out so we can hopefully get some people to, if not, you know, submit a proposal for the grant. You know, we can still support Partnership for Growth LA, which is also helping out the Good Earth Community Garden. They're over there in the West Adam, near, right on the cusp of Culver City and like La Tierra right there. So on near Adams. So great organization doing community gardening. So thanks.
Great, thank you. Melanie.
Yeah, just a quick update on Sepulveda Basin. There are a couple of meetings coming up. These are the last meetings before they finalize their plans.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. October 17th at 6 o'clock in Encino is an in-person meeting. The way they format it is they do their presentation and there's an open house and you can wander around talking to individuals. They don't, you know, they don't want people to share comments out loud, but at least you can see it and ask questions. And then the second one is the following day, 11:30 to 1 on Zoom. And I can share, I'll put that in the chat. And just as an update, I attended the recent Technical Advisory Committee meeting on it, and they have moved very far away from the goals that NCSA and many others here signed the letter regarding the process, the procedure, the goals that are in the council file that was written for this. The graphics make it look really good, but this is at this point a potentially $8 billion investment that is really, really strictly limited to the Olympics. Ignores climate adaptation. So I encourage you all to go to one of the meetings if you can, reach out to me if you have questions. This is gonna be fun.
Okay, well, I want you to know, Melanie, that I'm not really sure why, but somebody named Marciano reached out to Charles and the NCSA email and Muriel. It was very odd. I thought, I don't know how he came up with that list, asking to do a sort of a some on some meeting. And so when that gets set up, I'm going to forward that invitation. I think it's going to be for Thursday, this coming Thursday afternoon. So Mark Hanna, unfortunately, won't be available. I don't know if you think that's a big deal or not.
No,
oh,
I
you think that's a good thing? Oh,
plus.
okay. Okay. Well, then we'll set it up for Thursday afternoon, and I'll just forward that invitation to the advocacy committee. So maybe you can attend. It'll be Thursday afternoon, and then anybody else, if you want to come, you just need to be on the advocacy email list and be available for whenever that gets set up.
Fantastic. Thanks.
Okay. Oh, and Saray, you use your hand up again or just still up? I think still up. Okay, is there anybody else? Thanks for hanging in there. Sorry we ran late. We had a very bumpy start. Plan A crashed and then plan B crashed, and my goodness. But I'm gonna get a new computer, so that should help. Thanks, you guys. This was fun and productive, which is, I think, always the case. So great seeing everybody. And to be continued, and have a lovely evening.
Thanks, Lisa.
Bye, everybody.
Don't forget to save the chat.
Thank you.
Well, I lost a lot of it, so we're gonna have to, I don't know where it'll be, but it'll be somewhere.
Thank you. Great meeting.
Good night, everybody.
Night.
Thanks, everybody. Thanks, everybody. Good night.
Thanks, Lisa.
Thank you, Lisa, and thank you, Charles.
Yeah, great presentation.
I
I don't
saved
know
the
where
chat.
you found those photographs. Good. Okay, you did. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.